Hello there and welcome to a mild quality review of Majesty 2. The second Majesty game is a strategy game with a very interesting and for many people rather infuriating twist. You are actually not in control.
What? Strategy game where you can't control things. How does that work?
Well, dear viewer, I'm glad you asked, since there really aren't many other games like this. You of course have its predecessor, Majesty, published in the year 2000, and the Dungeons games, which have a similar feel to them. But there you have even more tools to actually control your domain. Here, the best you can do is place a high enough bounty and hope that there is at least a single hero willing to do his lord's bidding. These bounties, placed on a different tasks by flags, are essential to your success, as it is through these that you make things happen. Want to see more of your surroundings? Put down the Explorer flag. Want to put down a grumpy old dragon? Sure, place down the attack flag and throw the entire dragon's treasure on top as a reward. Remember that these people are not doing charity here, they are on a mission. A mission to accumulate as much wealth as possible with the least amount of effort. It sure as hell might not be convenient for you as a player, but it somehow feels very familiar. Anyways, we already established that we are dealing with a strategy game, but the game is not limited to the strategy genre. You also have the obvious inclusion of city building, with buildings being a key component to your society working the way it is meant to. More on that later. The full title of the game is actually Majesty 2: The Fantasy Kingdom Sim. There you have the rest of the genres that this game could be described with. Bunch of dragons, magic and stuff like this suborns the fantasy tag, and simulation is kind of a fitting description. Although, saying that, I'd really like to see some sort of an executioner and king's guard to enforce my will, since as far as I'm concerned, kings usually weren't huge supporters of democracy and capitalism. But then again, this is fantasy, so anything is possible, I guess. Now onto the core of the game we go. The story is rather simple. You have to prove your strength as the new king of Erdania and reclaim land that the previous ruler foolishly lost to the demon king. But do you have what it takes? Don't worry, you're not alone in this endeavor. You have your royal advisor who selflessly aids you on your journey. What is that? The advisor had to borrow a quarter of your royal treasure to finance his travels around Erdania, huh? Don't worry about it. It was probably a diplomatic mission to reinforce your influence over your dominion. There are 16 campaign missions to go through, including the tutorial, and half as many single missions that provide some challenges and different settings. This provokes the idea that the game time might be quite short, but considering the game is quite difficult at times, I believe you will be able to get a decent playtime out of it. Generally, I'd say a playthrough of the campaign only could take like solid 25 hours. Which is pretty good considering the price tag. In any case, these campaign missions are mostly the same, with your goal usually being destroying an enemy encampments or beating a boss. Each of these missions has its own interesting twist and turn, which makes them all unique in my mind, and therefore not as repetitive. That said, you will probably use the same pattern of expanding your town every game, until it for some reason stops working. So you will have to change it a little bit or think outside the box. Everyone usually has his preferred starting strategy and focus on different hero guilds, which as I said really matters on some of the maps. And sometimes if you don't go with the quote-unquote intended or most optimal strategy, you'll have to redo the mission. Now, for the actual city building, there are other buildings besides the guilds too. You have defense buildings, economical buildings, and temples. The defense buildings, as one would expect, are there to safeguard either the borders of your town or the borders of the town's graveyard, as both are equally dangerous. Each defensive building has different properties. Standard guard tower, for example, can be upgraded to shoot fire arrows and is also a host for a guard, which will roam in its proximity and defend the town with his life. The temples can produce the strongest heroes, but they also require a fair bit of preparation to even be built. For all this effort, you get heroes of great qualities though. Some of these can shield their allies, some of the dead, or walk around without their shirts to show off.
What?
The most important buildings for your treasury are of course the aforementioned economical buildings, be it a market, tavern, forge, or magical bazaar, where your heroes spend their hard-earned gold to get upgrades and shiny new gear. Hence, the money you spend on placing bounties comes all the way around through the pockets of your heroes' economical buildings, and lastly the tax collectors and their money bags back to your treasury. It all works very well, unless your tax collectors get killed, or your economical buildings destroyed. Then you're left with sadness in your eyes and an empty treasury along with it. Around the map are scattered monster dens, which constantly release monsters to try to destroy you to make the game just a little more hectic. And they absolutely succeed. More than usual, you get easily overwhelmed by the legions upon legions of enemies swarming the base, but that's just a part of the game you kind of have to accept. Furthermore, these waves are a signature thing of this game, which makes it stand out even more amongst other titles, where you face a single enemy and his army. I almost forgot about another crucial aspect of the game. Spells you learn through your guilds and temples that help you with different endeavors. Killing the enemies, healing your heroes, rebuilding your structures, or just extorting money from your poor peasants. Casting these costs you money, so be mindful. There are also the artifacts, which function in a similar way as spells, but they don't have any cost and instead they recharge as the time goes on. You also have to collect these first throughout the campaign. They can buff your economy, heal your dwarves, deal damage, or even summon the long dead. So why exactly is this game sitting on mixed reviews? Well, believe it or not, there is a reason for this, multiple reasons actually. So let's do something a little different today and go through the negatives first. Difficulty. You may have seen this one coming from a mile away, but something called balance, or lack of it, is one of the biggest issues this game has. Majority of the levels are easily doable, assuming you know what you're doing, so you're kind of lulled into a false sense of security. Everything will be alright and not a thing will stand in your way to a total domination. Except that's not true. As a contrast to these pretty simple missions, you have the hell difficulty missions, as I like to call them. There is nothing in between these two. You either do the map on the first try, or you reload 50 times, save scum, and search 10-year-old forums for very specific strategies. Fun times. However, difficulty isn't the only problem with this game. We also do have the difficulty problem on our hands.
Didn't we just...
Was that? We already been here? No, I assure you, this is different. This part of difficulty is not actually intended to be in the game. See, the problem here is that when this game came out, 60 frames was the standard, and anything above was not accounted for. So naturally, the developers tied some wave timers and spawns to your frames in game. And what does that translate to? Harder levels, of course. To battle this, you need to limit the game to run on 60 FPS only, either through NVIDIA control panel, AMD Radeon settings, or by setting your monitor to 60 FPS. The game does not have an FPS slider, unfortunately. You should do this to actually play the game the way it was intended to be. Don't worry, it's still plenty difficult even after this fix. The last con of this game I like to point out is probably the most infuriating. It crashes. And as you might imagine, high difficulty combined with crashes in a strategy city building game is not exactly enjoyable. I myself did rage quit at least 5 times during this last playthrough because a difficult mission crashed on me. And while yes, you might say it was my fault for not saving enough, the problem is the game actually crashes the most when you try to save. So as I said before, not very enjoyable. Not enjoyable at all. But I would say it just happens randomly. I didn't really notice any pattern in the crashes, so yeah, tough luck. Don't discard this game just yet though, there are still the pros ahead of us. This indirect control is just an amazing concept, and it makes the game awesome, despite all the bad things. The bounties, economy, all of these are super well done. And don't worry, there are actually some basic guards and royal guards that, even though you once again have no control over, are very useful as they automatically defend the palace and towers. Second pro of this game is the story and narrator. The narrator has done a really good job here, making every beginning of a mission an exciting endeavor, with me enticed to keep playing even after being absolutely exhausted by the last map. And while the story and lore might not be crazy extensive, he makes it fun to learn about. Third positive about the game is the aforementioned design of the missions. While all more or less follow the same general objective of kill the bad guy or his castle, each mission has something extra or different. For example, the Skeleton King possesses one of the artifacts you want, and he has been searching for his loved one for an eternity. And should you help him finally find her after all this time, it would probably bring you closer to getting what you want. I don't want to spoil these things too much, as I would like everyone to preferably play through the campaign themselves. But trust me, the levels are always fun. And sometimes there is even a smaller or bigger reference to some things from other universes too. Lastly, I would like to talk about the playtime once more, as 25 hours of playtime might not be great, considering this is a strategy game we're talking about. But I'd say it's long enough considering we're following one guy's story the entire time, if that makes any sense. In other games, you may have like a separated campaign following 3 different protagonists or factions, each having like 10 missions. Right here we have 15 missions. Okay, 16, but the tutorial should not count. And I feel like this is an optimal time to spend with a single hero. However, should you desire some more playtime, there are these single missions for you to try, or you could always replay the campaign with the knowledge and tricks you learned and collected along the way. You could also click on the randomize button, which changes the layout of the monster dance, making your single playthrough an entirely different one. I would just like to quickly point out the design too. I feel like the game is looking fairly good, but I guess that is up for discussion. Some people like it, some don't, so I'll let you guys be the judges of that. Anyways, we can see here that the pros do outweigh the cons.
Then the matter of recommending this is rather simple, right?
No, not at all actually. When I decided to make this video, I was actually prepared to not recommend this game, as I was aware of the crashes and difficulty issues. But things have changed since then. I have replayed the entire campaign once more, and when it came to the absurdly difficult missions I replayed like 15 times, I was determined to get through them. And after doing so, the sense of accomplishment that just flooded my brain was simply ecstatic. Am I going to base my recommendation on this? Well, partially. I also noticed the game goes for 9.99 euros on Steam right now, and that might as well be a fair price. If this was 20 euros, I'd tell you to wait for a bigger sale if you really like the concept and whatnot. But now, if you do like the concept, get the game, but expect unreasonable difficulty spikes and crashes. If you are afraid of these, rightfully so, wait for a discount, as this game can go for as low as 1 or 2 euros, and for that price it is a steal. But once again, be warned, the crashes may break even the strongest spirits, and this is not your typical strategy game. The indirect control is very much a niche thing, not everyone loves it. This recommendation is for the base game Majesty 2 The Fantasy Kingdom Sim, not for the complete edition. Some people say the game crashes even more with the DLCs, so that might be something to consider when going for it. I myself will probably get it eventually and review it too, when though I could not tell you even if I wanted. Also, I'll probably make some tips and strategies video on Majesty now that it's still fresh in my mind. So if you're interested in that, check out my channel. Hopefully I should have it done in like a month tops, but no promises. Anyways, this will be all from this mild quality review today. I hope you did enjoy and that I did shed some light on the entire mixed reviews debacle. And if you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like, comment, and possibly even a subscribe if you do want to get notified about my future uploads. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and goodbye.